Hello lovely people, it's Nicole, and today I have my March wrap up for you guys. So I actually already talked about a lot of these books in my Fempowerthon wrap up, so in the interest of both time and not getting too repetitive, I'll briefly mention those books, but then just kind of link the actual reviews of them in the doobly-doo, because I read a lot of books this month, and if I go and re-review all of them, this video is going to be like an hour long. So let's just jump right in. The first book I read this month was Romeo and or Juliet by Ryan North. This is a choosable path adventure version of Romeo and Juliet, and it is so funny. Seriously, I enjoyed reading this so very much. Of course, I didn't get through every single option because there are hundreds of them. It would have taken me like all year just to get through all the various options, but I think I got through most of Juliet's options, and I did see a lot of the other sort of Romeo options and all that stuff. So I think I have a fairly accurate idea of this book, but I really enjoyed it. It was so funny, so inventive. Like, I've never read anything like it before. It's different, and a lot of the paths are like, you can choose Shakespeare's path or you can have giant robots invade Verona. It's up to you. It's just funny and quirky and charming without feeling like it's trying too hard. So I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. Then I read Salt by, let me see if I can get this name right, Nayura Wahid. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, but this is a poetry collection, and I really loved this. Her writing style is beautiful, and she talks about really important issues. She talks a lot about, you know, the experience of being a woman, and especially being a black woman. Just her words are beautiful. I've said before, I don't know how to talk about poetry, but I really liked it. I tabbed a ton of pages, so this was super good. I gave it 5 stars. Then I read Stranger Than Fanfiction by Chris Colfer, and I actually ended up DNFing this after about, I want to say, 50 to 100 pages, somewhere in that range. I didn't hate it. I just was not getting into it. I love Chris Colfer's other books. His Land of Stories series is one of my favorites. I think he has such a clever, funny, sort of sarcastic, witty vibe in that, and I didn't get any of that in this one. Even though the setup is one that it seems like that would be a good match with, but I didn't get any of the atmosphere that I wanted from it. The characters I didn't really care about or even like. It felt like a number of moments the book pointed out diversity just for the sake of saying, look, we have diversity, there is diversity, okay, we can move on now. And then the thing that sort of finally made me say I can't do this anymore, I'm putting it down, is there's a character who's trans, and in the chapter that's from his point of view, it's constantly referring to him using feminine pronouns until like halfway through the chapter, and this is probably 40-50 pages into the book, and it's continuously been referring to him using feminine pronouns, and then halfway through the chapter there's sort of a surprise plot twist, he's trans, and then it starts using the right pronouns, and it just it felt like a surprise plot twist, and I hate it when people use identity for that. And there's something that just really rubs me the wrong way about this book using feminine pronouns for a trans person in their own POV chapter. So I didn't give this a star rating because I didn't feel like I really had enough grasp of the rest of the book and what I felt about the book in order to give it a star rating. I just DNF'd it. Not my thing. I love Chris Colfer's other work. I'll still continue to read his other work. This one just did not work for me. Then I read The Inexplicable Logic of My Life by Benjamin O'Leary Sains, and I went into this really excited because I really love Ariane Dante, and this is the kind of book that, like, my personal feelings about it and my knowledge of like the actual quality of the book differ somewhat, in that this is very character focused. Not a lot of plot happens. It's mainly just focused on how the characters are feeling and reacting to the few major plot points that do happen, and I tend to prefer more plot-based books, things that are a little bit more action-driven. So I did not get all that much enjoyment out of this, but I do recognize that it was a magnificently crafted book. The characters are incredibly written and diverse and well-rounded, and very just fascinating characters, and their relationships with each other. The crafting of the plot is beautifully done. The writing style, I mean, Benjamin O'Leary Sayans' writing is practically poetry. It's amazing. For me, I'm not a huge fan of this kind of novel, so I ended up giving it 3.75 stars. And then all the rest of the books I read this month, I read for Fempowerthon, so I'm just gonna go through them super quick and just say general, like, one sentence review and then my star rating. So first is Lumberjanes Volume 5 Band Together, and I really liked this. The plot was a little bit more self-contained story than overarching story arc, and I would have liked it to maybe connect a little bit more, but the plot itself was really fun and we did get some really good character development, so I give it 4.5 stars. Then I read The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, and this was amazing. Seriously, it's one of those books that I feel like the world needs right now, so I give it 5 stars. Then I read Of Fire and Stars by Audrey Coulthurst, and this was so good. It was a cute, kind of fluffy, iffy, maybe there. I don't know how really fluffy it was, but it is a fantasy queer romance, and it's a standalone, which is awesome. Just so many amazing things here, and I really, really enjoyed it. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. Then I read Three Dark Crowns by Kendar Blake, and this is a great, just really dark, kind of juicy fantasy, and I really, really enjoyed it. Can't wait to read the second one, so I gave this 4 stars. Then I read Under Rose-Tainted Skies by Louise Gournal, and this is kind of an intense read. Lots of kind of graphic depictions of mental illness. There's a trigger warning, there's some scenes of self-harm, but I think it portrays everything really honestly, brutally honestly at times, so I ended up giving it 4 stars. Then I read Daughter of the Pirate King by Tricia Levenseller, and this is a fun, feminist pirate story. Who doesn't love a good pirate story? And the main character is badass, and I love her, and the romance is great. So I ended up giving it 4 stars. Then I read The Forbidden Wish by Jessica Corey, and this wasn't so great for me. I didn't really love the characters. I didn't really feel like they had any character development, and the relationship felt like it kind of came out of nowhere. So I ended up giving it 2.5 stars. Then I reread Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda. I've talked about this book a billion times before. I love it. It makes me happy. Simon and Blue are one of my all-time favorite OTPs, so 5 stars again. Then I read The Careful Undressing of Love by Corianne Haidu, and this book is so cool and atmospheric and a little bit eerie. I wasn't sure coming out of it whether or not it was magical realism, and in just a really, really cool way. So I gave it 5 stars. Then I read If I Was Your Girl by Meredith Russo, and I enjoyed this book. I felt like the writing style and the plot itself, the characters were just, I mean, they were good, but they weren't amazing. But I think what really pushed this book sort of to another star level or whatever was that it's sort of social place in society, and it's a piece of representation that I think we really, really need right now. So I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. And then the final book I read for the Fempowerthon was The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis, and this is a great sort of punching the patriarchy in the face kind of badass feminist novel, and it gets really intense at times. Warning, there are scenes of very, very graphic violence and then lots of discussion of sexual assault in this. But it is a really, really good book with really, really cool characters. So I gave it 4.5 stars. And then I lied when I said all the rest of the books I read this month for Fempowerthon. I also ended up rereading, and it's not a very interesting book to look at because I have never had the dust jacket to this book, but I ended up rereading 13 Reasons Why because the TV show came out just very, very recently, and I had to reread this before I binge watched, and it's so good. This is one of my all-time favorite books and has been for probably almost like 9 or 10 years now. So I gave it 5 stars again, of course. Alright, so those are all the books I read this month. Lots of books. This may be one of the best reading months I've had in a really, really long time, but it's been good, and Fempowerthon is a big part of that, so thank you, Fempowerthon. Like I said, I will link my Fempowerthon wrap up with all the reviews for the books that I sort of skimmed over in the doobly-doo, so you can check that out. I love you guys, and I will see you later.